Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you have your Pong game working to the point where your ball is bouncing off the paddle and you can play the game continuously. Um, what I'm going to show you today is a variation of this Pong game. I'm going to add some barrels to the edge of the world, and we're having play a form of breakout. Um, you notice I've modified the project. I've made the world a little wider than it is high, so it's not quite a square. I've changed the paddle so that it's a vertical paddle that moves up and down, and the ball moves the same way that it did before. Here are some of the variations that I've made, and I'll show you the code for that. First of all, in the world class, I changed the size of the world to 600 by 400. Then I added the new ball to the world, and I added it at the middle of the world. So the width of the world, the x-coordinate where I added it is the width of the world divided by 2, which will actually be 300. And the height of the world divided by 2 is the y-coordinate of the ball, which will be 200. So it's positioned at 300, 200. So it's always at the center of the world. And by using the get width and get height methods, instead of 300 and 200 respectively, I can change the size of the world and I don't have to change this line of code. You want to try to do that as much as you possibly can when you write code. Next, I add a new paddle to the world. And we mentioned in the last video that I created a constructor called paddle. And when you say new paddle, you actually not only create a new object, you call the constructor of the paddle, and any code that you wrote inside that constructor gets executed. And of course, that's where we created the image and filled it in black. This is going to be added 50 pixels from the right edge of the left edge of the world, sorry, and then halfway down the world at get height divided by 2. And then the object will be added to the world in that position. Next, you'll notice that the paddle is a vertical paddle. So I changed the code in the paddle class. Instead of the image being 100 by 20, it's 20 by 100, which means that it's 20 wide by 100 high. So it looks like that instead. I also changed the code in the act method so that when the up arrow key is pressed, I change the y coordinate by subtracting 3. And by decreasing the y coordinate is the measurement from the top of the world to the center of the object. By decreasing it by 3, I move the object up. By increasing the y coordinate, I move it down, and I do that when the down arrow key is pressed. So I've modified the code so the paddle moves up and down. I've also modified the code in the ball class because when I hit the ball now, I don't want to change the vertical speed. I want to change the horizontal speed so it bounces back. So I've changed that line of code. Everything else is the same. Let's watch the game in action. You can see when I press the up and down arrow keys, the paddle moves up and down, and it bounces off in the horizontal direction instead of the vertical direction. Now what I want to do is I want to put barrels in the world, and the barrel is empty; it doesn't do anything. I'm just going to put a column of barrels here in the world. I'd like to put 5 of them here, and I'd like them to be in a nice, neat row. So I'm going to, or column, I mean. So I'm going to actually write some code to add these methods to the world. And of course that has to be done in the table class. So I'm going to create a method called add barrels and give it a formal an actual parameter of 5 because I want to add 5 barrels to the world. And I'll say public void add barrels, and my formal parameter will be a variable, an int variable that will be the number of barrels I'm going to add. We briefly looked at a for loop in the last project. I'll go over it again. A for loop starts with the word for, and inside its brackets it has three parts. We need to initialize or declare and initialize a variable. We almost always set it to 0. So I've called my variable b. It's an int variable. And you should be by now getting familiar with this notation of how to declare a variable. It's going to be the type of the variable followed by the variable name. Now in this case I want to start it at 0, and with for loops you almost always start the for loop at 0, but you don't have to. You can start it at any number. The second part of the for loop is a condition under which the loop will continue to execute. Remember, a loop is a series of statements that are going to be executed repeatedly. Now when b gets to be equal to, well, as long as b is less than n is the number that we want. In this case it's going to be 5. But as long as it's less than 5, we're going to keep the loop going. And the third part of the for loop is the statement that changes the value of the variable. Almost always it's going to look like this, b++, which is a Java shortcut for adding 1 to a variable. So each time the loop is executed, at the end 1 will be added to b. So if b starts at 0, it executes the loop once, b goes up to 1. And with b equal to 1, it executes the loop again, and b goes up to 2. And this continues as long as b is less than n. Well, in this case n is 5, so when n gets to be equal to 5, the loop will stop because this condition is false. So this will cause this loop to execute 5 times, and we'll end up adding 5 barrels to the world. Now I'm not going to add them in random positions anymore. I like the position of this, so let me check to see what the x-coordinate is of this. That's 531. Let's make it 530. So I'm going to put all of these barrels in the world at a position of 530. And I like this kind of spacing. So let's look at the y-coordinate of this. It's 65. So I'll start them at 65, and the y-coordinate of well, this one I like better. The y-coordinate of that is 180, let's say. So let's call this 60 to 180. That's 120. So these are about 60 apart. So I'm going to position these about 60 apart. And again, the x-coordinate is 530. We're going to say. So we're going to put all these objects with an x-coordinate of 530. So let's go add object new barrel. The x-coordinate is always going to be 530. The y-coordinate will be, we're going to start at 65. Okay, I'm going to start at 65, and we want to add on, what did I say, 60, between 60 pixels between each. So I'm going to say 60 times b, illustrating here that we can put expressions in our actual parameter list. Well, let's explain this one. 65 means that's the base. It's going to always be 65 at least. 60 times b. Well, the first time that the loop executes, b is 0. So this is going to be 0. So 65 plus 0 will be 65. And the barrel will be added at position 530 and 65, which is what we want. The next time, b will be 1, so it'll be positioned 60 pixels below the first one. So let's look at how that works for all 5. You can see we have them nice and spaced out, and they're in a nice neat column, which you can really only do with code. So that's your loop. Okay, so now what we'd like to do is when the ball hits one of these barrels, we're going to remove the barrel from the world. So let's go to the ball class, and you recall that we've used this getOneIntersectingObject method instead of canC because we want to have more control over what we do. So now we're going to create another actor variable that I'm going to call ball, and I'm going to say get intersecting object. But this time, oh, it's going to be a barrel, isn't it? So I should change this name to barrel. Okay, and again, most of the time, barrel is going to be null because the ball won't be touching a barrel. But when it is not null, then it's hit a barrel. And what we want to do now is remove it from the world. The world class has a remove object method in it. Let's look at the code of the world class. You can see that there is a remove objects and remove object method that has an actor parameter. So it removes whatever object that is. And we can use that method here by, we want to remove this object, the barrel that we just hit. So we can say, first of all, get the world, which is an actor method. That returns the world that we live in. Then we can call any method that's in this world class. And the one we want is remove object. And the object we want to remove is that barrel. Oh, good. So that's, it's saying, oh, I typed in minus sign instead of an equal sign. So not equals. Okay. So we compile the whole thing, and now when we run this, oh, not much of a game when we can wipe out two barrels with one swipe. But you get the idea that we could now remove an object from the world by first of all detecting it. This is the same as if can see worm, eat worm. But we could do other things with this barrel. We could make the barrel move if we wanted to. We won't do that, but we could. And so this is again illustrating the power of a little bit more knowledge in using the get one intersecting object instead of can see. Okay, the next thing I'm going to add in is I'm going to put a little smoke screen behind this just to make it a little more exciting. So tune in to the next video for that one.